Hello everybody, hope you guys are enjoying your day. Today we're going to be looking at this winter storm over areas into the upper Midwest through the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and then through Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado. You guys are all going to be looking at some snowfall. We already have winter storm warnings and winter storm advisories in place over the upper Midwest. You're going to be seeing about 6 to 12 inches in the higher amount areas, and then we're also going to be looking at some gusty winds on top of that already heavy snowfall, and then we're also going to be looking at some very high ice accumulation. So it's going to be on the order of about a quarter of an inch to half an inch of ice accumulation and about 6 to 12 inches of snow accumulation. We're going to be going over all of that, including my personal snowfall and rainfall forecast at the end of the video. So make sure you are staying tuned all the way until the end. So we're going to start off here with your National Weather Service. We have we have some freeze warnings and some freeze watches for areas into southwestern Oregon and into northwestern California, as well as some red flag warnings there for southern Colorado, and then scattered throughout New Mexico there, and then also for areas into the upper Midwest through Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, through Kansas, Nebraska, the Dakotas, Iowa, and then the western half of Minnesota. You're looking at some winter weather advisories in those purples, and then in the winter or in the pinks, you're seeing some winter storm warnings. That's where you're expected to get around 6 or more inches of snowfall there. And other than that, for much of the rest of the country, it's quite quiet. Now, here is your current surface analysis map from the Weather Prediction Center, and you are looking at a pretty strong low pressure system, about 1,008 millibars there. So it is quite. It's not a very intense low pressure system, but it is very strong. And something that's really helping is that you're having this high pressure right around here, and you have some very strong high pressure systems that are coming down from Canada, a 1033 high pressure system with that low pressure system over eastern South Dakota, eastern Nebraska, around that area. You're gonna see some very strong winds as you get that great difference in pressure, and you're so close, and you have such a little distance in between those two pressure systems, low pressure and high pressure systems. So that's going to actually lead to some very gusty winds. You already see some of these isobars starting to get pretty clumped up, and they're going to get even more clumped up, and that's going to lead to some gusty winds. And I think your area for the most wind production here is going to be over areas into North Dakota, South Dakota, through Nebraska, Kansas, and then over Missouri, Iowa, and then through into Minnesota. Now, not all those areas are going to be seeing snowfall, but it's going to be that's where you're going to see some very heavy wind speeds, at least there. Now, we're going to start off here with your current European model run, and this is your high resolution European model. You're seeing in the blues we have some snowfall. In the pinks, you're actually seeing some ice, and then in the oranges, you kind of see a little bit there. In North and South Dakota, you're seeing some sleet, and then also you're seeing some rainfall in that green. So as we continue this would be for this morning, and this is basically what you're seeing today. You're seeing a bit of gaps in the snow, and that's actually going to lead to lower snowfall accumulations through Nebraska, Colorado, and Wyoming than what we were expecting maybe a day ago. But we have seen some of those gaps of snowfall start to occur, so you're not going to see as much snowfall as was predicted a couple days ago, where you were looking at 12 to 18 inches maybe. But now it's still a fairly significant event, 6 to 12 inches of accumulation there. Now, something I really want you to pay attention to is this pink area. This is your freezing rain ice accumulation area, and wherever you see this is where you're gonna have some pretty treacherous road conditions, where you're gonna have some very icy road conditions, and it's gonna be very hard to travel. Now, as we continue this will be by Thursday night, and now going through Friday morning, you're seeing very heavy ice accumulation there over western Minnesota, western Iowa, eastern South Dakota, and through eastern Nebraska. They're seeing quite a bit of ice accumulation. This would be right around the time you're waking up on Friday. You're seeing that snow start to move into Minnesota, and you're seeing very heavy ice all the way down into Kansas and northwesternmost Missouri there, and then it turns over to rain. You could actually see a bit of thunderstorm activity, which we'll most likely talk about in tomorrow's video, and You could actually see some of that through Missouri, Kansas, and even down through Oklahoma and Arkansas there. And as we continue this, you start to see snowfall starting to taper off and move to the east as we get through Friday afternoon and evening, and then it moves through Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan, and then it's pretty much all said and done there. Now, let's look at some of your wind gusts because these are your wind gusts. So this is going to be this is not your sustained wind speed, but that gust of wind, the most ferocious wind speed there. And you're seeing once you get, this is in knots, so once you get right around about 30 knots, which would be the lightest shade of green there, that's where you're experiencing blizzard conditions. Notice how it's very spotty, so you're not, and these aren't even sustained winds, so I don't think you're going to see a blizzard because you need sustained winds of about 35 miles per hour or 30 knots, right around 30 knots, and you don't have that. You have occasional wind gusts of about 35 miles per hour. But also notice the direction that these winds are coming out of, straight from the northwest. You have some very cold air in western Canada right now, and that's going to seek south with this system. So your high temperatures today are actually in the 20s over the Dakotas, Nebraska, and then all through the Rockies. So all of these areas experiencing some very cold temperatures, and you get just east of this storm system, right east of around here, you're seeing temperatures in the 40s, 50s, maybe even some 60s further to the south, ahead of this system. So it's definitely a very interesting setup we have. And you look at all these winds, these wind gusts, and you're seeing your pretty consistent wind gusts of about 35 miles per hour here, 30 to 35 miles per hour, and this is going to stay throughout the day today, and then all the way pretty much through Friday for the most part. It tapers off a little bit on Friday, but still there for some of those regions experiencing some snowfall. Probably not going to get to those blizzard criteria, but I do think that you're going to get some blowing snow. I just don't think it's going to meet that blizzard criteria. Nonetheless, when you are traveling, you have to be very aware of your surroundings there, because you're also going to see some ice, and then it's going to change over to snow. So you're going to get some blowing snow, and you're also going to get some ice on the roadway. So a really, really bad situation there in terms of your road conditions. Now, here, look at your snowfall accumulation. You're seeing about 6 to 12 inches over many of these areas through Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, and into northwestern Minnesota. They're seeing 6 to 10 inches or 6 to 12 inches of snowfall there. And then you have in those blues 2 to 6 inches of snowfall, in the grays basically a coating to 2 inches of snowfall there. Now, not all of this is going to accumulate because it is spring. It's already April 2nd there, so we're already into April. The ground is probably above 32 degrees in some of these locations, especially as you get further to the south. So it's not all of this is gonna stick. This is just the European model from the radar presentation that it showing how much would fall, but not necessarily how much would accumulate. So it's probably gonna accumulate more on your grassy and wooden surfaces than it is on maybe your driveway or potentially the roadway. So definitely keep that in mind. Now, not all of this is gonna accumulate on the roadways. Probably a good 4 or 5, maybe 3, 4, 5 inches of snowfall are gonna accumulate on your roadways. Now, here's your freezing rain accumulation, and look at that. You have some readings above half an inch of ice, and once you really get above a tenth of an inch of ice, and I'm circling all the areas above tenth of an inch of ice, that's when you're really getting very dangerous on the roadway. So shouldn't be traveling at least for until Saturday or so over these areas through western Minnesota, through the Dakotas, into Nebraska, and into western Iowa. They're seeing some pretty good solid ice accumulation there. Now, we're going to also look at your National Weather Service forecast, and they're actually a little bit more a little less powerful with this system than what the European model was showing, and they're taking more into account how much is actually going to accumulate on those paved surfaces. I'm in my forecast, I have a little bit higher than this. I do think a little bit more than what the National Weather Service is showing is going to accumulate. You see, we have some amounts of over 6 inches, but they're very spotty here and there with the National Weather Service forecast. I think it's going to be a little bit more widespread through South and North Dakota, maybe stretching there into Minnesota with those 6+ inch accumulations there. Now, here is my personal snowfall and rainfall forecast here. Here's my storm track forecast, and you see we have over northern Iowa, eastern South Dakota, seeing that low pressure system, and it's going to be moving to the east, northeast there through Minnesota, Wisconsin, and into the UP of Michigan. Now, Here's your first layer. This is where you're going to be seeing basically a coating to 3 inches of snowfall. And this is through Wyoming, Nebraska, through Colorado, and into the Dakotas and into Minnesota. There, seeing under 1 inch to 3 inches of snowfall. Now, 3 to 6 inches of snowfall here, and this can be for northern parts of Colorado, parts of eastern parts of Wyoming, and then through western Nebraska and through the Dakotas and Minnesota, seeing 3 to 6 inches of snowfall. We have 6 to 12 inches here through areas through easternmost parts of Wyoming, through Nebraska, and the central part and eastern part of the Dakotas. They're seeing 6 to 12 inches. Now I think it's going to be more around 6, 7, 8 inches rather than up there near 12 inches. But definitely, I think some isolated locations where you really get just stuck in the snow could get close to 10, maybe even 11 inches of snowfall there. Now here's your first and last layer of rainfall accumulation, and you're going to see pretty much a light rainfall accumulation for most of these areas, especially as you get further to the south. But as you get into areas like Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Wisconsin, and the UP of Michigan, where you're in that warm sector of the system, I think you're actually going to see maybe up to half an inch to 3/4 of an inch of rainfall accumulation there. Now, that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications so you never miss video when I do upload. Anyways, guys, that was Eli with the guy, and see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.